Neru uses automation to scale clinical and resupply operations for durable medical equipment companies. We do that through an artificial intelligence first approach.
When a patient says, "Hey, Nora, like I had a terrible sleep last night," what happens next?
Nora will focus on troubleshooting around CPAP. So we have a lot of guardrails around what Nora can educate about and what Nora cannot educate about.
If Neru succeeds at the scale that you're going for, what does the future of sleep healthcare look like?
We are expanding the CGEM right now, which is really exciting. So I think it would be to expand into other areas of DME, expand Nora's capabilities for support. There are some unique challenges with communication regulation. Because of AI, we do have to tell patients that it is AI, especially in some states. You actually need to tell them explicitly up front. We're just like an educational tool. We're not actually providing therapy. We help people. I describe it as we're the coolest troubleshooting support you could possibly have.
All right. Today we got Morgan Mancada from Neru Health on the Claim to Fame podcast, the #1 DME podcast in the industry. Thanks for joining today, Morgan.
Thank you for having me, Wayne and Alex.
Yeah, awesome. Welcome, Morgan. Appreciate the time today.
Sweet. So Morgan, I just want to start some things off. So you're not just building a company, you're also a patient yourself with sleep apnea and insomnia and all these different things, right? And that kind of feels a little bit different than a typical founder story. How does being both the entrepreneur and the patient shape how you see this whole mission?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Alex. I think it's a little bit different from maybe I was completely motivated from my patient journey. It was actually quite serendipitous. I ended up in life science entrepreneurship through my just career path. I have a background in biotechnology. So think more, instead of medical devices, everything wet. So therapeutics, cellular biology was actually where I built my career in entrepreneurship. But simultaneous to building my early career at several life science startups, I was struggling with sleep disorders, sleep apnea, and actually almost failed out of my freshman year. I failed organic chemistry. I slept through a midterm. And it wasn't until at the end of undergrad that I thought, I might actually have a sleep disorder. So I waited for 6 months to get into the Stanford Sleep Clinic to get a PSG test where they hooked me up to 1,000 wires and measuring every potential vital that I have, and got diagnosed with sleep apnea. And so that was kind of my journey that was happening at the same time, these sleep disorders affecting me while I was building my career in life science startups. So I struggled with that sleep apnea diagnosis, was in denial myself, but also didn't receive follow-up care because I have mild sleep apnea due to just the morphology of my face and tongue. So it turns out I happen to be lucky enough to have a fat tongue and a thin airway. And those aren't great combinations for sleep apnea, even if you're a younger person. So while dealing with my sleep disorder, I was building a career in life science entrepreneurship, and I just really loved the creative process of coming up with a company from scratch, wearing the different hats. But for me, a big part of it is the team and building this orchestra of different talent and people with entrepreneurial hustle. And so I kind of got a little bit hooked on that. And it came together after graduate school when I was working with my two co-founders on looking at, what were the behavioral correlates for mental health challenges like stress and depression. And sleep was actually the biggest driver of next day depression scores. So it's very serendipitous. We began with insomnia 2 years ago, tested out various markets, direct to consumer, and then really landed on the CPAP DME market as a place to dig in.
Morgan, that's such an interesting story, how where you started, where you are now. I feel like you have so much further to go. Before we get into all of that, can you just elevator pitch what Neru does and kind of the problems you're solving and how your technology helps DME providers?
Yeah, so Neru uses automation to scale clinical and resupply operations for durable medical equipment companies. And we do that through an artificial intelligence first approach where we have a virtual employee called Nora that manages the entire patient journey. So it was kind of mirrored off of my own experience as a patient falling through the cracks. Nora will guide a patient through lead generation, screening, identifying if they have an issue, then through diagnostics if they're in the sleep journey, but can also just take a patient's treatment through, and then guides them through treatment and resupply. And we began focusing on the what we believe is kind of like the next generation of the patient experience that follows them continuously throughout the journey, answers any questions they have about the process, and is really kind of a seamless, unified experience. And the pain points that we're solving for DMEs is that across the industry, we've seen just increasing margin pressure where reimbursements are decreasing and then simultaneously being tied to adherence or compliance metrics. And this is pretty unique to this space because with medical devices, you can measure whether or not patients are using the devices. So it gives another reason for, or I would say just another barrier to getting insurance reimbursements for DMEs. And that's like decreasing the reimbursement revenues. And then you have high labor costs. So, high labor costs from trained personnel, but it's also high turnover for these personnel in both clinical and resupply operations. So we augment these workforces with this automated system to help DMEs scale both clinical and resupply operations more efficiently, which benefits the patient in the end.
Awesome. And let me ask you this. What are like the modalities that you're actually interacting with these patients? Is it voice? Is it text? Is there an app, a portal? How do they interact with this technology?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We kind of began, and just due to the limitations of being a startup, we began with like what was the most basic thing we could build. And so we did text message first, which is like super basic. I would got teach a patient how to use CPAP and then troubleshoot their issues. But as of the beginning of this year, we got into voice AI and started doing email as well. And what we found was that, I mean, it's kind of like communicates with you like a friend would. It texts you, calls you, you can call it, Nora, and you can also email Nora as well. And we found that this was actually really organic for patients, that patients prefer these types of modalities when interacting because I think they're just really lightweight. We kind of evolved as a culture and technology towards, easy interactions with other humans. So this feels very native to patients. And we found that it's different for each patient. So each patient has their own recipe for preferred communication, preferred frequency, how much information, what time of day, and then what modality. Some patients like email, some patients like text message, some patients like voice.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
interesting. I've been I was actually just listening to another podcast and they were talking about how people are starting to fall in love with their AI. So kind of like the movie Her,
Yeah.
people are falling in love with ChatGPT, and I guess maybe eventually people are going to start falling in love with Nora.
Yeah. Y- Yeah, so it's been really fun working on Nora over the past 6 months because we're seeing, I don't know if a fall in love might be extreme for now, but maybe in like a year when she can manage her insomnia late at night. But she it's really interesting. Like people sometimes have like initial apprehension to using Nora. They're like, "Oh, is this AI?" But then, and like you can hear this in a phone call, and then in 30 seconds they forget, and they just engage with it like it's a human. So I
Interesting.
think it's almost like the technology has now become so lifelike and human-like, and even like ChatGPT and the way it's conversational style, that there's almost an illusion of reality to it that we fall into and that we actually enjoy. And what we saw in the data across like thousands of patients was that some patients are treating Nora like a confidant or therapist about their
Mm,
sleep. They'll talk about the quality of their sleep every night. They'll talk about what masks they liked and didn't like. And so that's a huge part of our mission, is to create this like next generation of like magical patient experience where it feels like you have a friend who can also help manage your health a little bit more efficiently.
That's cool.
And that's where it's really exciting, is building that relationship with the patient.
That's
That's
super
awesome.
interesting.
How many patients have you guys tested this on?
Yeah, so we've tested on thousands of patients with, so we have a few different products. We have own hotlines that DMEs can use that manage customer service, and those are inbound calls. Right
Hmm.
now, we have 10,000 plus patients that have access to those phone lines across multiple DMEs and vertically integrated sleep clinics and DMEs. And then we have an AI adherence coaching product, which is kind of like Nora in the palm of your hand, but connected to your CPAP data. And so that's where Nora like sees when you fall off therapy, coaches you back on therapy, and then helps facilitate your resupply ordering. That has been tested on thousands of patients in a pretty large comparison against a control group. And we showed improvements in adherence, NPS score, and human call reduction.
When a patient says, "Hey, Nora, like I had a terrible sleep last night," what happens next?
Yeah, so I mean, it will depend on the version of Nora at the time, but currently, like Nora will focus on troubleshooting around CPAP. So we have a lot of guardrails around what Nora can educate about and what Nora cannot educate about. But in earlier iterations, Nora actually could give you like sleep hygiene tips and help you like figure out insomnia as well. Right now, she just primarily troubleshoots CPAP. And then if you have any other issue, in most cases, for most clients, we would escalate to like a medical professional.
Morgan, healthcare startups in general, and I feel like I know this firsthand, are notoriously brutal. Lots of red tape, regulations, slow adoption. What's been the hardest lesson so far?
I think so. Like all healthcare companies operating in the space, we have to be HIPAA compliant, but there's unique challenges with just being like so communicating with patients. I would say there's a few unique challenges. There's also some boons. So some boons are that we're just like an educational tool. We're not actually providing therapy. We help people. I describe it as like we're the coolest tech support, the coolest like troubleshooting support you could possibly have for your patients. So, and then we like help fulfill orders, which is, not as sensitive as health information.
Hmm.
So in that sense, it's been easy in that this isn't like software as a medical device. We don't necessarily need to get specific, meet certain regulatory hurdles. But as we potentially expand into other areas, we might run into those hurdles. But there are some unique challenges. So that's been a boon for us. But there are some unique challenges with communication regulation. So because of AI, we do have to tell patients that it is AI, especially in some states. You actually need to like tell them explicitly up front. So we kind of just do it for everyone now because we operate in all 50 states. And then there's also some HIPAA like wrinkles that we just have to keep a watch out for, because like
Sure.
patients actually can share more of their health information than like a DME might know, but to Nora. And so we take our security very seriously, and separating data, separating permissions, using a lot of layers for each slice of patient data. But we constantly have to think about like new ways that patients could interact with the system, and for them to reveal information that's sensitive, or and then we also have to transmit that data back to the DME.
Gotcha. Those are all really interesting points. I just had a thought. A lot of our community are running resupply programs for CPAP resupply of all different shapes and sizes. If somebody already has like a resupply program in place, how would they weave in what you're doing, and kind of where does it live in that mix?
Yeah, so we got this question a lot. I mean, what's cool about Nora is that she's really modular. So we describe it as like you're hiring, a new employee that will supercharge your team. They'll make all their redundant work go away. She fits in where your existing solutions are lacking. So as you guys probably know, DMEs come in all shapes and sizes with all different like homegrown solutions, off-the-shelf solutions, outsourced, insourced. And what we find is like the needs for resupply are very different. The
Hmm.
most basic offering that addresses almost everyone is just inbound resupply phone support. So that's where we
Sure.
generally start, is like handling inbound phone calls, helping write orders more efficiently to Brightree and Neru Health. The inbound resupply is kind of like just a gap across the industry in after hour support. But Nora can do some like outbound resupply. So really, we kind of just find the gap in the workflow for
Gotcha.
a given customer and then fill in that gap so that we're not stepping on the toes of existing like resupply solutions if they're already working already. So what we find is like, a lot of DMEs, like 50% will be like automated, like pretty good. And then 50% will still require like an in-source or outsourced phone team that is calling up patients, verifying orders, because there's a lot of logic, as you know, related
Hmm.
to resupply, where you need to communicate with the patient, get missing information, make sure they're compliant on their CPAP. A lot of those logical pre-steps Nora can do ahead of time.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure you get that a lot because it's like, all right, we have this engine running, these cool tools are popping up, we can use them to fill these operational gaps or again, try to reduce costs wherever you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Reduce cost. And we ultimately want to be complementary to existing solutions because we think of Nora as like just a different approach to the existing software stacks.
So Morgan, most people think of sleep as kind of I need more hours of sleep, but neuro seems like it's tackling like a healthcare problem that's costing billions. Is there a moment where you realize that this is more about like a systemic change that needs to happen?
Well, I think if you had asked me a year ago, I would have been like focused completely on sleep when answering this question. I still believe sleep is a, a Trojan horse in healthcare, and it exacerbates everything else, even just your day-to-day mental health. Like when you get a poor night of sleep, it's like a mini dose of depression for that day.
Well,
I don't think anyone would disagree with that on the planet. So I could talk for an hour about like all the research and passion that I have about sleep. But I think being in the DME space, it's also broadened my perspective just more broadly across like I think home care. And I think there's like even systemic issues with how care needs to evolve and evolve more into the home. And I see it doing that, with CGMs. I was talking with a friend about CGMs last week, and they were like, well, like, why don't we just wear a mini blood diagnostic, like Theranos on our shoulder? And could do blood glucose, like a lot of different analytes that could be used for health. And I see health moving in that direction. I see more companies there. And I think that this the direction that I'm like passionate about is just like transforming the way that health is like delivered in the home or at the fingertips of patients, whether that's sleep, which crosses so many different comorbidities, or just home care. And so that's why I'm really excited about this intersection of sleep and home care, because another angle is this like cross condition care, and it's really about how do you help patients with multiple conditions and how do you deliver care across multiple conditions for providers.
Speaking of like, these kind of crossroads, your solution can help patients, providers, even employers. How do you stay focused on where the opportunity is? In general, it's got to be massive, or is it we're kind of just moving through these opportunities and solving problems as we go? Or is there an area where you say, hey, this is the lowest hanging fruit to kind of knock this out of the park and create the most impact? Or is it ever evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I will say it has evolved over time, and we went through all of those segments through a very difficult and humbling startup journey where we started direct to consumer doing insomnia coaching, where it was like data driven insomnia coaching. We'd read your Apple Watch data, and Nora at the time would coach you on very, very basic cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, but using your Apple Watch data to do it. The challenge was we just couldn't find a sustainable go to market there. Willingness to pay from consumers for health products has, especially digital health products, I would say has dried up since the pandemic or been just saturated. And then we tested out employers, and we took an interesting angle there looking at shift worker employers, a lot of whom have sleep apnea, like truck drivers,
Yeah.
nurses, physicians. I was circadian rhythm coaching international airline pilot, like a cargo airline pilot, on optimizing his circadian rhythm. And we also found challenges there with go to market. And the employer healthcare market is mature now. Like, it's just every time you talk with someone in HR that's evaluating these benefits, their inbox is just completely saturated. So I couldn't find a go to market there. And then serendipitously, through the employer channel in trucking, found DMEs. And I think DMEs, like, it was like a natural kind of product market fit where they feel the financial pressure from the adherence
Hmm.
and all the clinical support they need to maintain. And then also they have like this interesting massive opportunity in resupply. So I think we just got pulled in the market by the market forces and the need here, which has been really exciting because from a market perspective, they have all the things you want. They have thousands of patients already. They have like data systems, only
Hmm.
two EMRs really to integrate with, not like 100. And the time is right as there's so much consolidation in the DME industry.
That's like I feel like it's so interesting how how people land in DME in general, but it's the trucking stuff is also very interesting to me. And I think overlooked by so many people. Like if you don't interact with any of that world, you'd have no idea that there's DMEs that specifically get contracts
Yeah.
with like Walmart to
Yeah.
help sleep apnea and make sure their drivers are getting good sleep. Super interesting stuff.
Morgan, could you kind of go on a different route real quick? I saw that you're a creative writer and a filmmaker on the side, right?
I am a creative writer. I am not a filmmaker anymore. I used to do that
Okay.
when I was younger, and I worked in the film industry for like 6 months after undergrad. I was like working for a film studio, like just kind of exploring that field. It's a really interesting experience.
Totally. How does like the creativity outside of the business fuel the way that you kind of lead inside of Neuro right now with all these other paths, like whether it's creative writing, podcasts, everything else you're doing?
I think we are taking a creative approach to how we're thinking about our business, and I try to infuse that in the team. And my co-founders actually are a creative writer, and our other co-founder is also like very creative. And I think that we want to bring a fresh perspective, and that comes through creating these delightful, magical experiences that seem like we want people to go like, wow, like I wasn't expecting healthcare to be like that. Most people, I think, when they think of healthcare, they think of like forms, appointments, waiting, difficulty, like communicating with
Totally.
your provider, never knowing where you are. From the provider's perspective, it's like too many patients that need to get their questions answered in some like portal with a very complicated interface, lots of dashboards they need to learn and keep up with. Like, it's annoying for everyone. And so I think what we're trying to do is really like bridge the provider and the patient closer together while magically like waving away the 80% of mundane, back and forth and tasks that need to be managed by both parties.
So if Neru succeeds at the scale that you're going for, what does the future of sleep healthcare look like? Is it all through AI? Is it what's the big picture here if everything goes according to plan?
Yeah, so we are expanding to CGM right now, which is really exciting. So I think it would be to expand into other areas of DME, expand Nora's capabilities for support. Again, we always like interface. We find that exact recipe of like automated care with human care because the humans are always essential for the top 20 to 30% of complex patient issues. And they're also critical for the therapeutic alliance between the patient and the provider that enables the patient to be accountable and succeed with care. But I see our system like expanding horizontally across DME and then hopefully, transforming the home care experience overall, because we're looking at building this platform that can simultaneously manage patient data, connect with patient data, connect with patients, providers, even potentially payers in the future, but always focused on that patient experience. So I think, from a bigger picture lens, it could be that Nora, or whatever Nora comes to be called for a patient, could manage maybe multiple of their conditions and multiple of their devices. Maybe it's embedded in their Alexa and they can talk to Nora, and Nora like remind them of, X, Y, or Z. So I think as more and more care becomes continuously measured and in the home, there's a place for Nora to expand and deepen that relationship with the patient across the lifetime of their health.
Love it.
Exciting. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's
Good
definitely a
stuff,
lot of
Morgan.
exciting stuff, man.
Thank you.
I think we can move on to the rapid fire round, which is how we usually end out every podcast. If you're
Okay.
ready for it, it's kind of like a this
Yeah,
or
sure.
that. All right, let's do
Okay.
it. All right, rapid fire. Here we go, Morgan. Sleep in or early riser?
Sleep in all the way.
Yeah, for someone with insomnia.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
Good point. Would you rather have 8 hours of perfect sleep every night or raise $100 million tomorrow?
Oh, I think 8 hours of sleep every night. I
like
care
that.
about my longevity, guys,
Yeah. Hey, if you're well rested, you
Biohackers.
might raise 200.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. Biotech lab coat or startup hoodie?
Startup hoodie.
Meditation app or espresso shot?
Meditation app. But maybe without the app, just the meditation.
Okay. Yeah, that we can go old school on that. Change healthcare from inside the system or disrupt it from the outside?
I think both. Can I answer that? Both. I think you need
Yeah,
both. I think you need the
Yeah.
experts
Yeah.
inside with the revolutionaries from the outside.
If you had one superpower, which one would it be? Never need sleep or instantly put anyone to sleep?
Never need sleep. Yeah.
I think I would go with that one too. The other one's kind of creepy if you think about it. All right, Morgan, thanks so much for joining today. I think we all concluded with everything. If anyone wants to reach out to you or find a way to contact your company, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, Morgan at neruhealth.com. Would love to hear from you. And then also just neruhealth.com. You can actually go there, check out Nora, and set up a time to talk. Would love to talk with anyone.
Perfect. Awesome. Well,
man.
thanks so much for joining today. We had a really good time. Anyone who has not yet subscribed to the Claim to Fame podcast, please do. Morgan, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Wayne.
Take
Have
it
a
easy,
great
Morgan.
rest of your day.
Likewise.